Let me start with what it is that we are to pass on to our next generation. And here's the background to the text that was just read to us. Moses, in Joshua 1:2, it says, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you, as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. Moses was the great deliverer. In fact, for the first 40 years of his life, he was raised up in the palace of Pharaoh, amidst the luxuries around him. And all of a sudden, because he committed murder, he had to run for his life. And for the next 40 years of his life, he spent his life tendering sheep. Suddenly, whom he thought he was somebody while in the palace of Pharaoh, he suddenly became a nobody. And at the end of the second 40 years, God appeared to him in a burning bush and appointed him to go back to Egypt to deliver Israelites. And all of a sudden, for the next 40 years of his life, he learned that God could use a nobody to be somebody. But he was dead now. And so he had to pass on the baton to Joshua. So now Joshua was the guy. He had come a long way, and he now is getting old. See, Joshua by now, very old and advanced, okay? And he summoned the elders now, and he had to gather all these elders. He has to pass on to baton. So he said, now fear the Lord and serve him with all your faithfulness, okay? Serve him with all faithfulness. And Joshua, as you know, he was the great guy. He was the one of the 12 spies who was sent out to spy the promised land before they conquer it. And out of the 12 spies, 2 of them, only Joshua and Caleb, came back. The 10 spies gave a bad report and said that, yes, there were giants in the land, and if we go in, we'll definitely be swallowed up by them. Our children will be killed. But Joshua and Caleb saw through eyes of faith, and Joshua said, yes, the land is indeed flowing with milk and honey. If God is with us, let us go and possess the land. He had that kind of faith in him that was able to conquer mountains. But at this point of time, he was getting old, and he had to pass on the baton, and he had to pass it to the elders. What then did Joshua pass it on? I want to say, first of all, what is this legacy? What it is not. First of all, it is not passing from one charismatic leader to another. It's nothing to do with the person. Yes, not everybody can be like Paul, or like Joshua, or like Moses, or like Martin Luther, or like Billy Graham. So that is not what it is about. The legacy is also not about passing of a SOP, standard operating procedure. There's lots of them in the world. It is not passing on of programs. And in any organization, and including the church, we can have many, many programs, but that legacy is nothing to do with programs. It is not even passing on of rules and regulations. And I know we have lots and lots of them, but that legacy has nothing to do with that. What then is this legacy about? May I suggest 3 aspects of it? Firstly, it is passing on of a life, a spirit that is authentic before God. Secondly, it is passing on of a story of successes and defeats, a journey with God that testifies to God's faithfulness, like what Moses and what Joshua did. Thirdly, it is a passing on of a faith, of a belief, faith, a deep love for God that has grown over years of service. Let me illustrate. We have a situation, a scenario with Louis, Eunice, and Timothy. Look at these verses here from Paul's letter to a young pastor named Timothy. I have been reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I'm persuaded now lives in you also. That's what Paul was telling Timothy. Notice how the race began with a woman named Lois running the first leg. We don't know how she came to know the Lord, but she finished her race and she passed the baton of faith to her daughter Eunice, who then handed it over to her son Timothy. 3 generations. But I want you to notice, particularly in that verse, what it was, the kind of faith that was passed on. It says there, sincere faith. Okay? Passed on the sincere faith. It's nothing to do with religion. It's not religion. It's not cultural Christianity, but real faith, life-saving, life-changing faith. Like a runner in the third position, Timothy watched his predecessors run the race, and he caught it. And he learned, and he was willing to run with it.